Off camera, this is Justice Thomas Wilhite of the Second Appellate District, and I'm here interviewing Justice Sandy R. Kriegler, who has recently retired, and it's a pleasure to see you again, sir.
It's nice to be back.
I thought we'd begin with talking a little bit about your personal background, where you grew up and how you where you went to school, that kind of thing.
I was actually born just a few blocks from here at California Hospital in downtown Los Angeles. And we moved to the San Fernando Valley out to Van Nuys. In 1953, we had a little house there. Then a couple years later, we moved to a different location in Van Nuys, and I grew up over there. My folks stayed in that house for about 50 years. This is kind of typical for that era. There were tracts of houses going up all over the valley. And so we moved into our house in '55, and about the same time, everyone else moved into their houses on the street. And it was a lot of fun because there were 2 or more kids in every house. And most of the families were pretty much the same. The dads had served in the Army or one of the armed forces, either in World War II or Korea, or like my dad, in both. And it was just a great place to grow up. We had a lot of freedom. We could ride our bikes all over the place. And
Different place than it is now, huh?
completely different. You know, we made our own fun. We didn't have video games. We didn't have cell phones. Nothing to track us. We just got up in the morning, got on our bikes, and took off, and came back at dinner time. And folks didn't worry about us, you know, as long as we didn't get into trouble.
So you go through public schools, I assume?
I did. All the public schools in Van Nuys, including Van Nuys High School,
Okay.
where graduated in 1968, and met my wife there, and we went to the prom together, and ended up getting married.
How many years?
It'll be 50 years in August, 49 and plus going right now.
Fantastic. So you graduate high school, then what?
Well, that was an interesting story because no one in my family had gone to college. And I did pretty well in high school, but I wasn't really paying attention to the fact you were supposed to apply to college. And so I'm talking to some of my buddies one day, and one of them says, well, I'm going to UC Santa Barbara. Another one says, I'm going somewhere else. And I said, oh, that's really cool. When do you apply? And they said, well, you're supposed to apply 6 months ago. So I kind of wandered over to the counselor's office and talked to the head counselor, and gave me a copy of my grades, and I had taken the SAT, and he called over to what was then San Fernando Valley State College, and talked to somebody, and he said, just go over there and show up. And I went in. It was way past the admissions time, and the woman took my grades and stamped admitted on it, and that was it. And that was fine. You know, we didn't have money for me to go away to school anyway. I needed to work a couple of days a week. And at Northridge, I could attend classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, work the other days. And so it was actually a perfect fit for me.
So what was your major?
I started off as journalism. I did that for a couple of years and kind of lost interest for a variety of reasons. And then I transitioned over to political science. So I ended up getting a degree in political science.
And after college, law school, how did that come about?
You know, I certainly wasn't looking for a career as a political scientist. And a couple of my college buddies had taken the LSAT and were starting law school, so I figured I'd give that a try. And so I did okay on the LSAT and got into a couple of schools and ended up going to Loyola.
Okay. And you finished law school, and well, let me ask this: during law school, did you do any clerkships work? What'd you do?
I did. At first, I worked for a private lawyer who did a lot of indigent felony appeals, and so I did research on appeals for these indigent felons, and did about maybe a dozen briefs or so, and got lucky on 2 or 3 of them, and we actually got some reversals. And in that process, I met a few people from the Attorney General's office who were on the other side. I also met Paul Turner. Paul Turner was a lawyer in that building and had actually worked for the same lawyer who was employing me. So we became friends, I think it was in 1974.
For people who may not know, Paul Turner was a justice on this court and presiding justice of Division 5, where
Yeah.
Justice Kriegler served.
He was. And after I worked there, my second year of law school, then during my third year, the Attorney General's office hired 10 law clerks from Loyola. And we made $3.17 an hour as law clerks, if you can believe that. And the job market was real tough when I got out of law school. The economy was bad, and there weren't a lot of job openings. But fortunately, the AG's office hired 2 of us out of that 10, myself and Mark Hart. And Mark and I had actually been in the same section of law school at Loyola, and we had graduated what was then Cal State Northridge in the same class. So we had a couple things in common, and we had one more thing that became a common experience for us once we were in the AG's office.
And that experience was?
Experience was we both had arguments in the U.S. Supreme Court by the time we were 30 years old. Mark was 1 year ahead of me. He had argued a Miranda case, and I got to argue a case involving the constitutionality of California statutory rape law.
And just so to clarify, Mark Hart is a very well-respected criminal defense attorney in the appellate sector. Interesting. So tell us a little bit about your Supreme Court experience.
The entire situation was very bizarre. I had this case in LA involving the statutory rape law, and I won in the Court of Appeal, and the issue was whether the law was unconstitutional because it protected only females and only males could violate it. And the Supreme Court took the case up. And there was another case percolating up in the Northern California area out of Sonoma County, which involved a juvenile charged with statutory rape. And the Supreme Court took that case up as well, and we all thought that was going to just be a traitor case. My case would be the lead case. So the deputy AG up in San Francisco on the Northern California case called me and said, you know, you've done all the briefing on your case. Mine's just a traitor. Do you mind filing the brief in my case? So I did, and then the Supreme Court turned around and made his case the lead case. So I ended up arguing it in the California Supreme Court and won 4-3. Very surprising result because the fourth vote in my favor came from Chief Justice Byrd. And to my knowledge, that was the only 4-3 case she was ever on where she voted in favor of the prosecution. So we got her vote. And I thought we were home free. I thought that was the end of it. And one day I was in trial up in Ventura, and I'm driving up to Ventura, and I have the radio on, and the news station says, and today the United States Supreme Court decided to grant certiorari and review the California Supreme Court's decision upholding California's statutory rape law. So now I'm not even 30 years old, and I've got this case. And I was on a team that was supervised by Bill Pounders. A lot of people know Bill. He was a Superior Court judge for many, many years. And Bill had always said if the team got a Supreme Court case, he was going to argue it. And so I wrote a memo up, a dummy memo from him to the Attorney General recommending that he let me argue the case. And I took it to him, and he kind of looked at me, and he said, you know what, I'm going to let you argue this case. I don't even understand the argument, and I'm not sure you're going to win. So you go ahead and take it. And Attorney General Duke Majan and Chief Assistant Philibosian signed off on that. And went back and argued November 2nd, 1980. And very tough argument. Again, it was very clear it was going to be a 5-4 decision one way or another. And times were different then, with no internet and no text messages and anything. You never knew when an opinion was going to come out. And so a few months after the argument, I was sitting in my office a little after 7 o'clock. I got in early. And a woman walks by, a lawyer, and she says, oh, I heard the news. It's really great. And I said, what are you talking about? She says, well, I heard on the radio that you won your Supreme Court case 5-4, which was the way I found out about it. And so I got on the phone then and called back to the Solicitor General's office that had helped on the case. And they said, oh yeah, it was 5-4. There were 5 different opinions written in the case, and you won. So crazy experience.
If I recall correctly, you had good confirmation that at least one of the justices had kind of cribbed from one of your briefs in terms of the way they decided the case. Is that true?
There was a very nice comment in there that said, as the state persuasively points out, and followed with something out of my brief. Which is really, it's always nice to see that in an appellate decision from any court.
Yeah. Well, you had quite a bit of appellate experience in the Attorney General's office, but you also did a lot of trial work, did you not?
I did. I tried to do as much trial work as I could while I was in the criminal law division, which was my first 6 years. Mm-hmm. And I did a trial here and there. And in 1981, the Attorney General's office took over the Hillside Strangler case from the District Attorney's office. And Roger Bourne and Mike Nash became the prosecutors on that case. Roger had been in charge of a trial unit in LA called the Special Prosecutions Unit that did organized crime trials and investigations. And Roger called me in and said, would you mind filling in for me while I do this Hillside Strangler case? It'll probably be 6 months or a year, and I'll be back. I said, sure. You know, they were great cases. And he never came back. The trial lasted 2 years, I think, and there was a year of preparation in there. And it became the balance of my career in the Special Prosecutions Unit. And we tried cases all over the place. I tried one in San Diego, a couple in Orange County, tried a big murder for hire involving the Mexican Mafia in LA. And I was really glad when I got appointed to municipal court, because I was just about to start a very, very lengthy death penalty case in Humboldt County involving the Aryan Brotherhood. And it would have been highly inconvenient to be traveling up to Humboldt and back every week. And fortunately, I got the call from the governor's office in 1985, right before that trial was going to start.
And what age were you then?
I was 35. I just turned 35.
One of the youngest judges in the county.
I think so. I think I was right close to the top of being the youngest there. There might have been 1 or 2 others.
So you're assigned to, you're appointed to municipal court, the former LA municipal court, right? Right.
And back then it was still fairly early in Governor Duke Majan's term. And I actually got a call from him personally with the appointment, which was a very nice touch, since I'd gotten to know him a little bit in the Attorney General's office. And I started, like most new judges in LA, in the traffic courts building, doing a bottomless pit of drunk driving trials. And then I bounced over to the criminal courts building and did some prelims for a while. And then in '86, the municipal court, LA Municipal Court, opened a new courthouse in Hollywood with 3 judges. And I was assigned over there with Harry Crowder and Mike Nash. So the 3 of us were the original Hollywood court judges.
And why don't you mention who Harry Crowder was, or what his prior association was?
Harry Crowder, a really interesting guy. Harry was a boy from Oklahoma who fought in World War II and came out and joined LAPD, and eventually became part of the robbery squad, LAPD's robbery squad. And there were 4 guys on the squad, all 6'5" and taller. Together they weighed over 1,000 pounds, and they all wore these fancy suits and hats. They were called the Hat Squad, and they're part of LAPD lore. They would meet the bad guys from out of town at the train station or the police station and give them an unwelcome howdy do and send them back. And they were notorious. They were so famous when people would send teletypes from other law enforcement agencies to the robbery department. It would just be memo to the Hats, and everybody knew who they were. And so Harry went to law school at night, as did one of the other Hats, Clarence Stromall, and they both practiced law, and Stromall went on to be a Superior Court judge, and Kriegler was on municipal court for his career.
So You were in Hollywood, then where? Van Nuys?
Went from Hollywood to Van Nuys for just a few months, and I was only there a couple months when I got the call that I was being elevated. And so I went to Superior Court, started in Pasadena Juvenile, which is a really nice assignment. There were some interesting cases. The caseload wasn't too heavy. I had enough free time where I had to deal with the supervising judge out there. That if any of the judges with a criminal calendar were on vacation or sick, I'd go in and fill in. And I did some overflow rulings on demurs, summary judgments, things like that. And I really enjoyed it, but after about a year and a half, the presiding judge called me up and said he had a different assignment for me. So that ended my stint in juvenile court.
And where was the different assignment?
The different assignment was back to Van Nuys, but they had opened up 4 new courtrooms that were going to be long cause courts with no calendars. You're going to be assigned out of downtown, even though we were in Van Nuys. And this was the height of the rock cocaine problem. And the murder rate was terribly high at that point. I think it was 1,000 or more a year in LA City. And there was a huge backlog of homicide trials. So they sent 4 of us out there. It was me and Stan Weisberg, Mike Hoff, and Bert Phelps. And we just did one trial after another. And I remember my first year out there, I think I did 20 cases and 3 death penalty cases, 8 homicides. And it was a great assignment. I really loved it. And really interesting cases. And did that for a couple years. And then the new supervising judge of the Northwest District in Van Nuys decided to make me the supervising judge of the felony courts, even though I was the youngest of the felony judges and the youngest person out there. So I supervised the 8 or 10, whatever we had, felony courts for a couple years.
What were the duties of the supervising judge? What did you have to do?
Mainly you had to make sure every case had a home within the speedy trial period. We were supposed to do all of our own cases, but sometimes you'd be in trial, somebody be in trial, and they'd need a home for a case. And there are administrative things that would come up, some policy matters. But the courts pretty much ran themselves. The felony courts did at that time.
At a certain point, you ended up on what was then called the Appellate Division of the LA Superior Court, did you not?
I did. So I did felony trials in Van Nuys basically from 1991 to 1999 or 2000, something like that. And I'd done everything I set out to do. The cases were becoming routine, and I was looking for something different. And I heard there was an opening on the Appellate Division of Superior Court downtown. And since I had a background in appellate from my days in the AG's office, I applied for that, and they took me in. And I did that for a couple years as well. Really enjoyed that. It wasn't high stakes appeals, but they were important to the people that were doing them. And I really enjoyed the people I worked with. Bill Beverly, Patty Jo McKay, Charlie Lee, Kathy Doy Todd was there for a while. And it was a real good operation. I think we did good work, and the people were wonderful to work with.
And after the Appellate Division, what?
So I was happily ensconced in the Appellate Division one day, and I saw the presiding judge of the Superior Court down in the parking lot, and he gave me the finger wag to come over. He wanted to talk. And the point was they were having some difficulty back in the Superior Court in Van Nuys, and they wanted to make a change in the supervising judge out there and wanted to know, since I had roots out there, if I would go back. And I said, sure. You know, what I didn't know, and he didn't tell me, was that part of going back meant we had to close 6 courtrooms out there. They had been doing a study countywide of which courts were overstaffed, and they didn't tell me that I was going to have to go out and at my first meeting say, 6 of you people are no longer going to be working here because we're overstaffed. So that was a bit of a surprise, and it required some preparation work on my part. I kind of worked the judges out there to garner some support for what my plan was. And I didn't necessarily go to the most popular judges or the judges that I thought would support me, but I wanted to get some outlying judges who would stand up at this meeting when I announced what was going on and get them to say, we have to do this as a team. And it was kind of funny watching how the meeting went down, because these judges who normally didn't speak at meetings were suddenly raising their hand and saying, we can work this out. And it ended up working out very smoothly. So a bunch of judges volunteered to leave, and there was very little acrimony about it.
Sounds like your political science major bore fruit.
You know, it was a very uneasy time, because they really did kind of drop this on me at the last minute, and I'm sure they got some laughs out of my reaction when they told me before I went out there.
Yeah.
But it ended up working out great, and things ran very smoothly. There were some problems that needed to be resolved out there, staffing-wise. The building had been damaged in the '94 earthquake, and this is now 6 years later, and it still hadn't been completely repaired. So I started holding weekly meetings with the construction people and everybody that had an interest in what was going on. And within a year, we got the building all up to earthquake standards and cleaned up and running at full speed again. So it was important.
How long was this second tenure as supervising judge out there?
So I was there from the middle of 2002 through the end of 2004. And I had no interest in doing it again after that. Supervising is fine, but I preferred to be running a court. And at that point, Justice Turner, who was the presiding judge of Division 5 here, said, you know, we've got a backlog. Can you come and sit as a pro tem? And I said, sure. I got the permission from the PJ and of the Superior Court. And they said, yeah, you can go. So I went, and in the meantime, I applied, as you did, for an appointment to the Court of Appeal with Governor Schwarzenegger, who had just taken over. And so I was going through that process, and I was working here in Division 5 as a pro tem. And they just happened to have an opening in Division 5. And so when I interviewed with the governor's office, and I was asked, where would you like to work if we appoint you? I said, Division 5. And because I had a staff there already, I had been using the staff that had been with my predecessor, Margaret Grignon, and I really liked them. And so sure enough, on I think it was February 4th or something like that, when we both got the call from the governor's office that we were elevated to the Court of Appeal. I didn't have to move offices or anything. I was already here.
So tell us, let's talk a little bit about your time on the Court of Appeal. What did you most enjoy about it?
You know, it's very academic, and you don't have a lot of the pressures that you have in the trial court. I was somebody who always liked to get my cases out in a prompt fashion. But when you're a trial judge, there's a lot of moving parts, and if even one of those moving parts is out of whack, everything grinds to a halt. So if you have a juror who's late or sick, or a defendant who misses the custody bus, nothing happens. And you have these time pressures because there's a limited number of hours in the day when you can hold a trial. And you need to give breaks for your staff and your court reporter. And you don't have any of those factors, really, at the Court of Appeal. The other difference is you can work 24 hours a day. And I actually ended up working many more hours, I think, but under different pressure when I was on the Court of Appeal. And it's just, you know, the law is fascinating to see how it develops. And when you get a case where there's nothing quite on point, and you get to be the one to decide what a statute means or what procedure should be followed, it's very intellectually stimulating, and I really enjoyed it. I had the benefit of, like I said, inheriting a great staff. I had a little bit of turnover over the years, but we had a lot of fun in my chambers. We were well known for probably being the most raucous and the most laughter and a lot of practical jokes. But it was very enjoyable. I had the same experience on the trial court as well. The staff I had on Superior Court was just wonderful, and our court was always a popular one to work in.
Any cases that come to mind that you were particularly interesting or difficult? Or
there were a few. The ones that stand out the most, I think, are the ones where I saw a case from another division of the Court of Appeal that I didn't think was quite right. And I would usually write those myself. I wouldn't have staff work on those. And so I had 2 or 3 of those, maybe 4, that I disagreed with the decision of another division of the Court of Appeal, and was hoping to create a conflict which the Supreme Court would take up. And I did. And fortunately, those were all decided the way I thought they should be decided. And I enjoyed that, not because I was taking on another division, but simply because of the challenge of saying, this is how I see this issue, as opposed to how somebody else looked at it. And those were good. Those were good cases.
Did you do a lot of your own writing?
I did. I enjoyed writing cases, and I would cherry pick the ones I liked. Anything that involved any sort of issue involving sports or something like that, I do. And I enjoyed doing criminal cases because of my knowledge. I could get through those pretty quickly. And also, at some point, I became a member of the CalCrim Committee, the Judicial Council's Advisory Committee on Criminal Jury Instructions, and ultimately became chair of that for the last 5 or 6 years. And so I had a particular interest in any case that involved a question about the validity of our CalCrim instructions. And I would usually write those myself as well.
I think the listeners might be interested to hear a little bit about your well-known card file that pre-computer kept somewhat up to date, but then probably not. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, right now it seems like I'm talking about the Stone Ages.
Yes, yeah.
When the advance sheets would come out with the newest cases, from the time I started as a young lawyer, I would read every criminal case, and I had my little 3x5 index cards. And on every legal issue, I would write a little note on my index card about what the court had held and the case citation. And I kept doing that all the way until 2000. So I did it from 1975 until 2000. Must have ended up with 6 or 7 boxes full of these little cards, writing on both sides. I wish I could say they were valuable, but nobody else can read what I wrote. I had my own.
But you had a background in research long before you came to the Court of Appeal.
I did. It was my version of Westlaw, but a little more primitive. But the thing is, with my own categories, when I was looking for something, I could find it very quickly. And when I was a trial judge and I needed authority, I could take a break. I didn't keep them on the bench with me like a couple other judges did. And I could find the authority. And I want to say, in fairness, I wasn't the only one doing that. There were others in the AG's office, Bob Anderson and Gary Hahn and Bill Pounders and others, Ron Cohen in the DA's office. They all kept card files as well.
Right. So you also enjoyed judicial education.
I did. I did some speaking to the Judicial College for, 5 or 6 years. Had a course on courtroom control, and you and I taught a course on making an appellate record as well. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. All the new judges go there, and my courtroom control class was pretty fun. I had a bunch of video clips and anecdotes and clippings out of newspapers of things that judges had done to get in trouble, and those were always pretty well received.
Well, you need to tell them about the practical joke you played on me at one of our sessions.
Well, it was part practical joke, part real. I created the PowerPoint for one of ours, and one of my pitches to these new judges was, everybody gets reversed on appeal. And I had the ability to edit some faces so they would talk, kind of animate them. And I had people like the Chief Justice saying, "So, Justice Wilhite, have you ever been reversed?" And you would say in response, "Yes, I have, many times." And the Chief Justice would say, "Oh, in which cases?" And then we started flashing up these different cases that had your name on it. And the point was to the new judges, if you're ever going to teach, be sure to control the PowerPoint.
Yeah. That was very well received. So how many years total did you serve in the Court of Appeal?
13. 13.
And all of that in Division 5.
All in Division 5, yeah.
So at a certain point, you made the decision to call it quits. What led to that?
You know, a couple things led to it. First of all, I had been on the bench for 33 years. And believe me, having grown up where I grew up, in a family where no one else had attended college, I had never envisioned myself ending up on the Court of Appeal or any court. And so I was satisfied I had done everything I could have possibly hoped to do. And some of my colleagues that I had started with had gotten ill on the bench and passed away and didn't really get a chance to enjoy a retirement. Mm-hmm. And I had things I wanted to do with travel and maybe some coaching, you know, with baseball, things that I had enjoyed with my own sons. And now that I had grandchildren, I wanted to do some of that. And we wanted to do some travel. I wanted to teach, and you know, I had some connections at Cal State Northridge to go back and teach. And I wanted to maybe take a shot at doing some writing as well. Mm-hmm. And so all of that just kind of hit me at once, and I decided the time was right, and pulled the plug and moved on in 2018.
And so now in retirement, what are you doing?
Well, unfortunately, the pandemic has put a chill on some of my plans, but I have taught at Cal State Northridge. There's a upper division course in the criminology department called Introduction to Criminal Law. I've really enjoyed that. Students have been great, and I've been doing that since 2019. And we did some traveling before the pandemic, and hopefully with things slowing down, we'll be able to travel a little bit more now. And spent some time with the grandkids more previously before the pandemic hit. A little bit harder now. And just last year, I was able to help my son coach our grandson's Little League team, which was really nice. He's 10-year-old, and we ended up winning the league championship out of 9 teams. And then we won the district championship as well. And it was wonderful having 3 generations on the Little League field. The field happened to be a field I played a Little League All-Star game on in 1962.
Wow.
Both my boys played Little League at that league in the 90s, and then my grandson's playing there now. So there's a lot of nostalgia involved, and it was just great being out there with the grandson and my son.
You know, you're a very modest guy, but I was thinking before this interview of something or a few things maybe that a lot of people don't know about you. And I hope I'm going to just spring this on you because I think it's important. You've done a lot of charity work. You've helped a lot of people. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I don't think people know this about you.
Yeah, I have. You know, I've been lucky between my wife and I to end up in a really nice place. And so we've tried to help people out as much as we can. Some little girls with some tuition at a private school, and every Christmas the family puts on a big party for either foster kids or other disadvantaged kids, maybe helping a couple hundred kids over the holidays, things like that. And a lot of hands-on stuff. Like you, I mean, the stuff that you and Celeste have done for the regional food bank is along the kinds of lines that, along the lines of things that appeal to us. Hands-on stuff that we kind of do privately and not get a lot of public accolades for it, but feel good about it.
Well, I know you've changed the course of a lot of people's lives, and you and Shelley should be very proud of that. We've covered most of your career. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Not really. I think we've covered all the bases. It's you know, it's just been fantastic. I've met so many great people. You know, for example, all the people we worked with in the AG's office. Mm-hmm. That was really a golden era in the office. The office was fairly small. The Court of Appeal was smaller. There was just 5 divisions. Because there was no computers or text messaging or anything, we knew the people in the clerk's office. If we needed a file, we went down and just went to the desk, and we knew the people who were there. And we had these personal relationships. A lot of the justices on the Court of Appeal knew us by name because we argued so regularly.
In fact, we grew up with Joe Lane being in the clerk's office, and Danny Potter.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, it was ironic to end up here with them back as being the clerk administrator of the division, the district, and those are good relationships to have. You know, there's something to be said for institutional knowledge and carrying it over within a court, and I think we really had that. And you know, and just watching the other people out of our generation in the AG's office who went to the bench. You know, there was Gary Hahn, Bill Pounders, Roger Bourne, Mike Nash, you, Bill Wiseman, some of the civil people too. Patty Kitching, who went to the Court of Appeal, Judy Ashman-Gerst.
Justice Bigelow.
Bigelow
Bigelow.
was after I was gone.
Right, I was there.
Sanjay Kumar was a little bit after me as well, and you know, it was quite a group. And I always thought back to the people we looked up to when we were in the AG's office that had come out of the office: Ron George and Gordon Ringer and Jack Gertson and people like that who were kind of legendary in the office. And we got to follow in their footsteps, which again wasn't something I envisioned happening, but it did.
Yeah. Well, it's been an honor to know you, honor to serve with you, honor to interview you for this this important project. And if there's nothing else, I think we'll call it a day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.